You're listening to DraftKings Network.
This is the Dan Batard Show with the Stugotz podcast.
Jim Trotter has been doing an outstanding job covering football for a long time. He's an award-winning national columnist for The Athletic. He's a former reporter for NFL Media, and you may know his name because a few months ago he sued the NFL for discriminatory and retaliatory practices. He asked the commissioner in public a couple of different times about the lack of diversity in the league office, in the coaching ranks, in the media, and then his contract wasn't renewed this past March. So, Jim, thank you for joining us, and just take us through where it is you think that this was an active wronging, that you've done a job, I would assume, that for a long time has been something the NFL has thought was favorable, and then all of a sudden they don't renew you, and you don't think that's a coincidence.
No, first off, Dan, thanks for having me. Look, this would be pretty simple if not for one major fact here. In November of 2022, I knew my contract was coming up in March of 23. And I knew that I had ruffled some feathers internally by asking these questions about hiring practices within the NFL, both within the newsroom as well as the coaching ranks. And so I said to my agent, can you reach out to them and find out where we stand? Because if they weren't going to renew my contract, then I knew at that time I would need to look for employment elsewhere. And what Sandy Nunez, the VP over on-air talent, told my agent was that she could not see any reason I wouldn't be brought back. Everyone loved me. I had supporters in New York and LA, and that there shouldn't be any issue. But it may come with a pay trim because they were reducing budget. But she could not envision any reason I wouldn't be back. And in fact, asked my agent what were some of the things that I wanted to do next. And so that's November of 2022. Well, we get to the Super Bowl in February of 23, and I see Sandy before the commissioner's press conference, and I tell her, hey, I'm going to ask Roger about this issue again, the same thing I asked him about last year. And I could see the look on her face. But anyway, no problem. I go ahead and I ask the question. And 3 weeks later, I'm at the scouting combine, and Sandy asked to meet with me. And after 45 minutes to an hour, of small talk, she then says to something that I had said, that's a great segue. I wanted to ask you, are you in alignment with the newsroom? And I knew exactly what she meant. And I said, no, I can't be in alignment with a newsroom that doesn't have Black representation. And she said, that's what I thought. She said, well, it's tough fighting corporate headwinds. Sometimes you have to compromise. And then I cited 3 examples of areas where I felt I had compromised, and I said to her at that point, but there's one thing I'm not going to compromise, and that's my integrity. And then I said, I want to be clear here. Are you now saying you're not renewing my contract? And she said, I don't know. It's being discussed. 3 weeks later, they called my agent and told my agent they weren't renewing it. So I would ask, what changed between November of 2022 when we were told there was no reason to think my contract would not be renewed? And in fact, it may come with a pay trim because they're reducing budget. And March of 2023, the only thing that transpired between then was me asking the commissioner about the lack of progress as it relates to diverse hiring. And then it was interesting, after that press conference, all of a sudden there were things that went on internally that we'll get into in the lawsuit that reflected a change in culture in terms of how I was being treated and what was going on.
I have some of the information from the lawsuit. Terry Pagula, the Bills owner, and Jerry Jones, the Cowboys owner, have denied some of the things that are alleged in the lawsuit. But just take me through. So you asked this question at the press conference of Goodell, and you get what feedback immediately? How do you learn that you have upset people, and how do you go about learning that you are now going to lose your job? You covered some of that, but what happened in the immediate aftermath of you asking the question? What happened next?
Nothing, because typically, just like the year before, nobody got back to me when I would ask these questions of the commissioner. And in fact, Dan, the thing that's sort of troubling is that there are outsiders who think that this was all about asking a question of Roger Goodell. In fact, I had been pushing this issue for the last 2 years internally because I'm a guy who believes in the chain of command and I don't believe in going over people's heads. So I was addressing this at every level internally before I ever got to the commissioner. And in fact, I'll tell you a story. We are at every summer, the media group gets together in LA in June to talk about where the league is, where the coming season is going, things to focus on, how we are doing as a group, all those sorts of things. And so during that day and a half of meetings, there are breakout sessions. And one of the breakout sessions is with on-air talent. And at this time, it was Mark Quinzel, who was the head of the media group. And so in that meeting, Mark Quinzel says, you can ask me anything you want. It's off the record. I'll answer as honestly as I can, et cetera, et cetera. So I say to him, we can ask anything we want. Yes, you can. I said, okay. I said, Mark, I just saw you up on the stage in the big ballroom talk about the improvements that have been made in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I said, on that stage with you were 3 or 4 white men. I said, there was no one who looked like me. I said, in our newsroom, we don't have one black manager. I said, we don't have one full-time black employee on the news desk. I said, so when you pat yourself on the back and talk about the improvements in diversity, equity, and inclusion, how am I to balance that with what I see? And so he said, well, we do have a full-time black employee on the news desk. And I said, no, we don't. And he said, yes, we do. He said, I walk through the newsroom every day. I see these individuals. And I said, Mark, we don't. And at that point, Hans Schroeder, who is an executive from New York who oversees the media group, is seated there and he tries to interject. And I say to Hans, no, Hans, I need an answer on this. And I said, Mark, I will drop this and never bring it up again if you just give me one name of a full-time black employee on the news desk. And he pauses and he says, well, I can't think of it right now, but I'll get back to you. That was in June of 2022. He still is yet to get back to me with that name because he can't get back to me with that name because there wasn't anyone and isn't anyone. So when I say to you that I've been bringing these things up internally for 2 years and have been unable to get anyone to address this or talk about it, if people think I'm making this up, when we go to trial, it'll all come out. And I'm not going to say something that I can't prove and that I can't document. So from that standpoint, Dan, that's what I mean by this. This was not some fly-by-night thing where I hadn't been pushing this issue. I felt this was an important issue from the standpoint that we as journalists cover a player population in the NFL that is 60 to 70% black. And how can you in a newsroom, which is supposed to be reflective of the community that it covers, say that you are doing that when you have no black managers, no black copy editors, and no full-time black employees on the news desk? I'm sorry, you can't say that and be genuine about it.
What do you want?
Well, that's easy. You know, I've had people ask me, what does success look like in this lawsuit? For me, it looks like change, real change, quantifiable change, where in that newsroom, we have black managers, we have black copiers. And I say we, I still say it as if I'm there, I'm no longer there. But where that newsroom has black managers and has black copy editors and full-time black employees on the news desk, so that when decisions are being made about how this player population is covered, that there are people who share the same cultural experiences, the same life experiences, et cetera, who are at the table when those decisions are being made. It's not complicated. And in fact, it's good business if the NFL would actually look at it that way instead of people trying to protect their own territory and putting out this image where the NFL continually says diversity, equity, and inclusion are core principles. And yet I can go to your newsroom and say, nah, that's not true. Or I can go to the league office and say, why is it that of the 11 top executives under Roger Goodell, only 2 are black? That doesn't sound like you're committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And lastly, I would say this. If the NFL really believes that, then release your promotion and retention data as it relates to the demographic groups within the NFL. And when you release that, which you have not done to this point, I think we will get a clear picture of just how committed you are to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I should tell the audience, Jim, you have done honorable pillar of journalism type of work, and you don't like to be the story. You've never been the story, and here you find yourself the story. How unpleasant and uncomfortable has this particular fight been for you?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dan. You're right. We were taught in J school that as reporters, you never want to be the story. But here's the thing. I'm 60 years old. I'm getting to the end of my career. When I received those awards this year from the Pro Football Writers of America and the National Association of Black Journalists, where I was named Journalist of the Year, you start to think about legacy, and you start to think about, what kind of impact you can have on this business and this game. And so for me, I remember coming into this business where there weren't people who looked like me in the sports department. There was only one place prior to me going to Sports Illustrated where there was another Black person in the newsroom. When I got to the San Diego Union Tribune in 1989, I was told that I was the first Black to ever be hired in the sports department there. And during my 18 years there was never another one hired. And so what I am trying to do to some degree is make this better for the people who are coming behind me so that they don't have to experience some of the things that I experienced. And so is it uncomfortable being in the spotlight on this issue? Of course it is. I would rather not be there. And in fact, I told Hans Schroeder this after that media summit where I challenged Mark Quinzel, and I met with Hans Schroeder in the hallway after that session. And I said to him, Hans, I don't like asking these types of questions. I said, but I believe strongly that if the NFL is going to stand up and say that diversity, equity, and inclusion are core principles, that the NFL should walk that walk. And I said, I believe that there is a social contract between the NFL and the public. It's the most popular sports league in this country, if not the world, that it should be a beacon for the things that are right, and it should stand up for these things that it says. And I said, you all talk about diversity. I said, I am talking specifically about Black people. I said, I feel it is disingenuous when you say diversity because you lump everyone into that pot, including white women. I said, I am focused exclusively on Black people because the wealth in this league is being made on the backs of Black players. Never got a response from him.
Hans Schroeder is a great villain's name, and what just rolled through here was utter shock at you saying that you were 60 years old. I want to go through this lawsuit, and we will do that with the unbelievably unbelievably beautiful 60-year-old Jim Trotter. Well said by me.
Yes.
This episode of the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz is sponsored by Sleep Number. Achieving the best sleep quality is essential for overall well-being and daily functioning. With Sleep Number features such as responsive air that automatically adjusts to help keep you asleep, and with active cooling and warming so you can sleep at your ideal temperature, individualized sleep is achievable like never before. Like 94% of Sleep Number smart bed sleepers, wide receiver Jamar Chase depends on the Sleep Number smart bed to take his game to the next level on and off the field. The holiday season is approaching. While joyful and full of festivities, it can sometimes lead to a lack of sleep due to a variety of reasons. Here are some tips from Sleep Number to help. Do yourself a party favor and avoid sugary treats, eating too late, and alcohol, as they are known to compromise sleep. Moderation can help you get the rest you need, so you aren't feeling too pooped for more holiday fun. And now save up to $500 on the new Sleep Number smart beds, plus special financing, only at Sleep Number stores or sleepnumber.com. Sleep Number, an official Crucial Catch partner of the NFL. See store for details.
Dan Le Batard.
Stugotz, if you give him the choice, Stugotz, you can have the very same thing one of two ways. You could get it honestly or you could steal it. He'll always choose stealing it.
Stugotz.
Well, it's the quicker path. I mean, it's just,
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
I want to get to some of these lawsuit details, Stugotz, because you've seen these stories. They've been reported on Terry Pegula, the Bills owner, alleged to have said to a reporter in 2020 in reference to player protests against racial injustice, quote, if the Black players don't like it here, they should go back to Africa and see how bad it is. And the suit also claims that when you, Jim, asked Jerry Jones about the lack of Black front office executives in 2020, he said, quote, if Blacks feel some kind of way, they should buy their own team and hire who they want to hire. Both of these owners have denied this. So what can you tell us? Because you're telling us you're not going to bring anything in front of a lawsuit that you cannot prove.
I can tell you that both things are true. As far as the Terry Pegula situation, there were 40 plus people on that Zoom call when this reporter made that allegation. So that one's very easy to prove. I did not hear Terry Pegula say it, nor in my lawsuit do I say that I heard Terry Pegula say it. What I say is that a reporter from the NFL Media Group alleged that Terry Pegula made this statement. And now the NFL has said it has done an investigation into this, right? And so if what this reporter alleges is not true, I find it interesting then that you are saying that your reporter made it up. And if your reporter made it up, then why is that reporter still on the air? Something doesn't quite jive there with me. As to the Jerry Jones thing, I don't think anyone's going to be shocked that Jerry Jones would say something like that. If you know Jerry's history, if you know how he feels on certain things, if you know that he is the owner who said if a player takes a knee, he will no longer be a Cowboy, it's pretty easy to understand that Jerry Jones would say something like this. But Dan, I think it's important here. I know people focus on those things because they're sensational and whatnot. But what those things really do is speak to a larger culture within the NFL. And that's part of what this lawsuit is about. I remember when I told my bosses that I wanted to tell that Jerry Jones story on the air. It was the day that John Gruden, it was either the day or the day after that John Gruden had resigned. And we were going on air to have a discussion about it. And I said, I want to talk about the larger culture of the NFL and how black men are treated. And I said, I want to tell this story that Jerry Jones said to me. And all of a sudden I was told, well, wait a minute, we need to talk about it. And then my immediate boss said, you know, if you say this publicly, it's going to blow up. And I said, of course I do. And he said, well, we need to kind of talk about it and get our, get this in order. And then I was told not to talk about it on air. And so I was kind of upset about that, but I understood I'm not the person in charge. We all have to answer to someone. I said, but what I am going to do is go on the air and just talk about this culture within the NFL. And as I said that day, when asked about John Gruden and whatnot, I said, I do not speak for Steve Weish, who was seated next to me, nor do I speak for anyone else at the media group. I speak for myself. And I said, I am exhausted by the constant attacks on black people and black men in this league in particular. I said, for John Gruden to say what he said to Bruce Allen, who I believe was the club president at that time, I don't remember the exact title because they changed. I said, a club president is one step below the owner. And so if John Gruden felt comfortable using that kind of language, referring to a black man as having Michelin lips, I said, that speaks to a culture within the NFL where this type of language and these types of viewpoints are accepted. And I said, that should not be accepted. And I said, the fact that we go through the NFL's history where we have never had a black majority owner, where the NFL used race norming to decide settlements in the concussion case, where basically it was saying that it agreed that black people did not have the same cognitive abilities as white people. The fact that blacks aren't being hired as head coaches, the fact that there are not blacks fairly represented within the league office at the highest levels, the fact that there are no black managers in our newsroom, no copy editors, no full-time black news assistants. All of this speaks to a culture within the NFL. And so I'll tell you a personal story about why this is such an issue to me. So in 2018, when I got to the NFL, Steve Weish and I went to the leaders and said, we'd like to start a podcast, and we'd like it to be from the perspective of two black men covering the NFL. Well, they never said no, but they never said yes. And so it died on a vine. Now, fast forward to the summer of George Floyd, where he's murdered. And all of a sudden, these NFL executives within the media group come back to us and say, hey, remember that podcast? Are you guys still interested in doing it? And so we knew what it was. And initially, I said to Steve, I'm not interested in giving them cover in this way. And we talked about it, and we said, well, we could do a lot of good with this. And so we went ahead and we did it. So we're getting guests that I don't think they ever thought that we could get, right? You can go down the list. We can talk owners are coming on the show, top players, Patrick Mahomes, Larry Fitzgerald, whoever. Steph Curry's coming on the show. Chuck D's coming on the show. Ben Crump's coming on. All these different people, head coaches, all of this. Todd Bowles comes on the week of the Super Bowl when Tampa Bay is playing and whatnot. And so with 6 weeks left in that podcast, they came to us and said, hey, we've got a sponsor who wants to join your show. Are you guys okay with that? And we said, well, first off, who's the sponsor? And they said, well, it's Intuit TurboTax. So we're like, okay. And they said the sponsor would sponsor the show for the final 6 weeks. And I said, look, I don't know a lot about podcasts. Can you tell me what a sponsor pays? And they said, well, this one will pay $250,000 for 6 weeks. And so we got off that call, and Steve Weiss, myself, and Thomas Warren, who's our producer, said, we should ask if we could get a bit of that, because we're putting together the show. We're doing everything. We book our own guests. We do our own research. We edit our own show. The only thing the NFL does is take a link that we give them and put it up on a social media site. So we said we should ask if we could get some sort of remuneration from this. So we asked to meet with the head of the person who's over the podcast group, right? We get on that Zoom call, and all of a sudden, there are like 5 or 6 people, none of whom look like us, all of whom are in management, 2 of whom are the top 2 people at the NFL media group. Mind you, we didn't ask to meet with any of these folks. So now we're feeling like, well, I'm not going to speak for anyone else. I'm going to speak for myself. I'm feeling like we've just been ambushed. And we are told by David Jurenka, who is one of the top managers at the NFL media group, we're not paying you for a podcast. We don't pay for podcasts. It's not happening. I mean, he's like sort of aggressive about it. And so I said to them, well, can you tell me what it costs you to put on a podcast? And initially, no one could give me the answer. And then finally, they came back. I think it was Mark Quinzel, and said, well, $10,000. And I'm thinking in my head, so it costs you $10,000 to put on a podcast, and we have a sponsor who's willing to pay $250,000 for 6 weeks, and yet we can't have any of that? And then David Jurenka says to me, Jim, you don't have the authority to go out and shop this podcast. And that's where I got a little miffed, and I said to him, David, I never once said I was shopping this podcast. What I said is people have come to me and asked me if they can get our podcast on their platform. And I said, I defy you, I challenge you to go out and find anyone who can ever say that I shop this podcast to them, because you won't find them. So it ends. The next day, my supervisor calls me, because now they want to be in makeup mode. Says, yeah, I just want to know how you're feeling and whatnot. I don't know why David had such a red ass on this and whatnot. And I'm like, I'm not talking about this, because it's not going to do any good. It's not going anywhere. And then David Jurenka sends out a message to the 3 of us. Hey, I'd like to have a meeting with you guys. So we get on the call, and he says, yeah, that really didn't end well the way we wanted. And I just wanted to kind of see if we could, talk through it, just the 4 of us and whatnot. And we had already made up our minds we weren't going to talk about it because it wasn't going to do any good. And so I said to him, David, you put us in our place. I said, I understand where it is. And he's like, no, that wasn't the point. No one was trying to put you in your place and whatnot. And I said, it's all good. We're going to take these last 6 weeks. We're going to be professional. We're going to finish out, the show and whatnot. And then what we find out subsequent to that, Dan, is that a release and an announcement is made that the NFL has sold its podcast to iHeartRadio. And included in the release is our show. No one ever talked to us about this. And I said to Steve and Thomas, you guys can go forward with this if you want. I'm out. I'm not working for free for the NFL. It is not in my contract to do a podcast. We did it to help the NFL. And from that standpoint, if they don't want to pay us for it, those days of working for free are over. I'm not a part of it. And Steve and Thomas decided that they weren't going to do it as well.
Jim, we have 2 minutes left here before we get out. But just to be clear, when you're going to your superiors saying, I want to quote Jerry Jones saying, if blacks feel some kind of way, they should buy their own team and hire who they want to hire, you're talking to white men and seeking their permission to say this, correct?
One white man and one man of Pakistani descent.
And they are telling you you cannot?
Yes. Do not talk about it on the air until we have had a chance to discuss it.
All right. So macro, explain this part to me. You care about journalism. I care about journalism. Why should the NFL network care about journalism? Why should they care about you having a journalistic right to tell your story when they've got the conflict of interest of being the corporate brand of the NFL? Why should they respect your journalism in 90 seconds the way that we'd like them to respect your journalism?
Look, my whole thing is just be true to who you are. If you say that we're an independent arm and that you're not influencing it, then let us be that. And if we're something else, then tell the public that. You can't have it both ways. And so what I asked before I took the job is I said, how are we going to cover sensitive topics? And what I was told by Mark Quinzel is, we will always cover the news. And I said, I'm good with that, as long as I know we cover the news. What I didn't understand what he meant was, we will cover the sensitive news if if everyone else knows about it. If no one else knows about it and it's sensitive to the league office or to the owners, then we won't. And that's why you never saw a story about the alleged comments by Terry Pegula. It's why you never saw a story about Jerry Jones. And it's why I was not allowed to report on DeMar Hamlin when I was told that the league was the one that told the teams they should warm up because the game was going to resume. I was told to stand down on that story as well.
Jim, thank you for the time and thank you for the fight, sir. I don't know whether you knew you were going to lose your job or whether you expected some of what came with it, but I appreciate the work you're doing, sir.
I appreciate you, Dan. Thank you for having me.
60 my ass. I mean, come on, man.
Not 60.
60, brother.
No.
60. 60.
No.
60.
A young 60, though. A young 60.
I wish I felt a young 60.
This episode of the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz is brought to you by KFC's new hot and spicy wings. Get fired up this fantasy season with 8 pieces of spicy marinated hand-breaded wings for just $4.99. Are you kidding me? They're a can't-miss call for whatever the fantasy gods throw your way. In the midst of a managerial hot streak, keep it rolling with KFC's new hot and spicy wings. Did you just assemble the worst lineup in fantasy history? Who cares? You can get 8 KFC new hot and spicy wings for $4.99 right now. Marinated in spice, hand-breaded to perfection. KFC's new hot and spicy wings are here. 8 pieces for just $4.99. It's finger-licking good.
Stugotz here for my friends over at Simply Safe. I love them. I have had their system in my house for many, many years now. It is fantastic, especially the Video Doorbell Pro. Amazing. Listen, there's never a wrong time to protect your home, but this fall happens to be an especially good time because you get up to 50% off a brand new Simply Safe home security system. Simply Safe is comprehensive protection for the whole home with advanced sensors that detect break-ins, fires, floods, and more, plus HD cameras for both inside and out. So if you're traveling around this holiday season, have some peace of mind with the best security system out there. It is Simply Safe. It's powered by 24/7 professional monitoring for less than $1 a day, half the cost of traditional home security, with a new 24/7 live guard protection and the Smart Alarm wireless indoor camera. Satisfaction is backed by Simply Safe's money-back guarantee. Try Simply Safe for 60 days, risk-free. If you don't love it, return your system for a full refund. You have nothing to lose. For a limited time, save up to 50% on any new system with a Fast Protect plan. Visit simplysafe.com/DLB. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Dan Le Batard.
You keep mentioning Lou Harris and Lou Williams and Montreal Harris. You keep mentioning Harold, excuse me.
Stugotz.
Nick, thank you for so much for being on with us. Really enjoy your work.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
I have been leaking confidence since the halfway point of that Trotter interview when I stumbled into an exit ramp trying to talk about how shocked I was that man was 60 years old. And then I just blurted that he was beautiful out of nowhere.
You're a beautiful man.
I don't know if you can. I don't know if I want to relive that. I'm telling you, I've still got it on me. I've still got it physically on me, and I feel like all of you are looking at me right now, and I'm wearing only the red underwear we've talked about too much on this show.
And you still wouldn't feel sexy.
No, I would not.
Damn shame.
It is.
I feel bad for him.
I do too. What's going on? Can we eat your grief now?
Let's examine.
What's wrong with you?
Let's
Just
examine.
don't cry.
Let's examine why it is.
Sorry.
Are you?
Yes.
Are you? Because you're not.
You're crying a lot. I'm concerned about you.
You're not.
You're making yourself cry.
You're not.
I mean,
it's often because of you. You're not.
Yeah, but you don't find yourself sexy. I mean, that's sad.
When did you last feel sexy?
Right.
I don't feel sexy.
Ever?
That is not a thing. That is not. I don't have whatever confidence it is. Man, some people in the audience must hear what I'm saying here. I do not. I think the rest of you are hiding in your maximum confidence sexiness, as if you guys, like, I can imagine the amount of swagger that Stugotz has wandering around his house in his underwear. I'm sure he feels desirable to all, but that is delusion. That is not sexy. His delusion, I don't believe to be sexy. But let's examine this for a second.
feel like I'm sexy.
Did you guys think that the answer to that question would be, yes, I feel sexy all the time? You should see the way that
Yes, you're rich.
Bingo.
I feel rich all the time. That's not a problem.
If you could use your money to change one thing about you, what would it be?
I would make myself more forgiving with myself.
Well, I meant physically.
It would not
physically,
be sexy.
right.
You always want to do the deep, thought shit. Just physical, Dan.
Make yourself sexy.
You want fake calves? Like, what are we talking about here?
I'd like the ability to dance with confidence because I believe that is something that the sexy have.
Good answer.
That's a confidence thing,
that
Dan.
was
You
a
can
good
dance
answer.
well. Just do it.
You'd
Or you
spend
could
it
pay
on
for lessons.
dance lessons.
Yeah, you can go to dance lessons. That's something
Tony,
that can be fun. Yeah.
Tony, you say that with such confidence, and the last time I had that conversation was with an in his prime Deion Sanders in a locker room in a mustard-colored suit telling me, yeah, Dan, you could wear this too.
You could.
No, I
You
could
could.
not.
You could.
No, I
Tony,
could
lend
not.
him some confidence because you have too much.
Nope.
Yep.
Too much. What is that supposed to mean? I was hearing the whole sexy, not sexy thing out there, and I was like, guys, this is embarrassing. Yeah. Everybody's sexy. Like Jess said, everybody has it within themselves to go out and be sexy. La pinta perfecta, papi, rico. That's the thing. You don't have that. You gotta have that. When you go out, you're dressed up to the nines. You got the linen shirt on, you got the linen pants. Oye, estoy perfecto.
And it's an attitude. I can't dispute what you're saying. What percentage, let's just, out of curiosity, because I believe that I work in an industry that is very insecure.
69%.
What percentage?
You get it?
No, explain it to me, Stugotz.
69.
Yeah, how does that work?
Well, you know.
No, I don't.
Maybe you don't.
No, explain it to me.
It's the sex number. When you want to call sex, you dial up to 69.
We will do that with the unbelievably unbelievably beautiful 60-year-old Jim Trotter. Well said by me. We will do that with the unbelievably beautiful.
What were you going for there, Dan? Like, you were going
Well-aged.
well-groomed, well-aged. Where were you going?
I was going well-maintained, but I realized that wasn't a way to describe a human being. Beautiful. Beautiful.
So that gap maintained almost came out.
That is what came out, and I didn't feel very confident. And in the middle of it, incidentally, the way that started was the first shock I saw in the other room at Jim Trotter saying he was 60. And evidently, Jessica's got a weakness here. She can't tell how old people are because she thought Chris Russo was in his 40s, and she thought Jim.
No, I thought you guys were in your 60s. Yeah.
Somebody sent me a picture today. I've got to send this to you. Video team, get this up. It is a photograph of Edith and Archie of All in the Family at
Jesus.
At a piano. This is good, though. It's worth it.
What is this now?
I promise you.
They haven't heard of it.
No, I promise you that this is good enough. Just find it for me. I was showing Mike during the break. It's from All in the Family, and it's, was at the time in the 70s, the #1 television show in America. And Edith and Archie are at a piano, and it is showing you their photographs and their age at the time. And Carol O'Connor is 48, Archie in the photograph, and Edith is 44. Come on. Wait till they get this up and put it on the screen here so you see who is 48 and 44. But Jessica was the cue that I got. She was more shocked than anyone that Jim Trotter was 60. I was plenty shocked. I did not think he was 60. I didn't think he was older than me.
I've been following his career for a while, and I definitely didn't expect him to be the age of my parents. But then again, when I found out Stugotz was like 39, it sent me into a tailspin for years.
I will get that up on the screen in a second. But Lucy, have the listeners come through and told you where it is, sent you to where? You had 4 choices on, look at that. Look at that photo right there. 48-year-old Carol O'Connor.
No way.
He's 48 there. That's younger than Stugotz. That is younger than me. That is younger than Jim Trotter.
People just age differently now. It's like when you see the pictures of the 30-year-old quarterbacks from the 1950s that look like they're cigarette-smoking 75-year-old men with beards and no hair.
Lucy, where is the audience sending you?
We're going to Seattle. I'm so excited. So we're going to go to Washington, Utah on Saturday. If anyone sailgates, we're trying to go sailgating, which is, they'll tailgate on the water on a boat. I might have a plug. I might not. So it's nice to have a backup option. So if anybody sailgates, let me know. And then the next day, we're going to try to go to the Seahawks Commanders game. Wow. And then on Monday, I really like grunge music, so I'm going to go see some of the grunge spots. That's not for work. That's just for me to have fun. But I'm really excited for that. And maybe if I have time, I'll go see the Space Needle, too.
Wow. It's over. The Space Needle's overrated.
Oh, Tuesday I have to come back.
Are you going to go to that gum wall? Put gum on the wall?
Oh, heck yeah.
So grammable. Am I right?
I won't take. I'll film some of it and put it on social so I can expense everything from that day. Thank you, Stugotz, for teaching me how to do that. I'm really excited. I'm really pumped. It'll be fun.
Sailgating is just tailgating on a boat. That's all it is, correct?
Sounds so fun. Yes. But apparently it's not a thing you could just hop on a boat and go do. You have to know somebody. And I sort of know somebody.
Is it around here where it's a sandbar?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I can answer that for you.
I think it's in the bay.
Yeah.
Or the harbor, I guess.
We'll find out together. Where did you want to go and how strong was the audience in pushing you toward Washington? Washington, this is the best Washington team I've seen. They seem to be offensively overwhelming. I know. I wonder how many people care about this, but at one time, Stugotz, Tyler Van Dyke was going to head to Alabama, and if he had, Penix was going to be in Miami. That's how that was going to work. Penix is going to be at the Heisman ceremony. That team is offensively exceptional. He loves throwing the ball deep. This is an enormous game. In the history of the program, they haven't had many bigger than this. You're walking into potentially an electric atmosphere and perhaps the most important game of the weekend, given that Washington is still outside the top four, correct?
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
But I think everyone understands that's a good football team, and it's obviously an overwhelming good offensive team.
Yeah, it's a really great football team. Washington has looked kind of bad the last few weeks, though. So that was part of the appeal of going to this game. Utah is a tough team, so we could see an upset here. But Washington, their offense is absolutely electric. I've heard amazing things about their stadium. This was my top choice. I think Eugene was my second. And then Tallahassee and Miami, that was the bottom option. A lot of people voted for it, and I was like, I'm just not going to listen to you guys on this one. I don't trust you here.
Wow.
What kind of democracy is that?
Hold up.
Democracy falls, Dan.
I did 2 polls. I did one on Twitter and one on Instagram. And the Twitter, Washington won. The Instagram, Miami won. But that's because I think I live in Miami, so I'm geotagged for Miami on Instagram.
Right.
So I think those results were skewed.
You don't want to be around Mike Ryan when he leaves that stadium on Saturday. So I don't blame you for that. And also, Washington's got the overhang. It gets loud in there.
I'm so excited. I'm really pumped for this.
Why was Michigan, Penn State not an option?
Because I didn't want to go back to Happy Valley.
No one ever does.
Why are we
Bad
having
memories.
polls if you're just not going to abide by the results?
No, I abided by
It's
one
like
of
the
the
bat
results.
thing at the zoo.
Hold up. There were 2 polls, and one of them was Washington, Utah. That won the Twitter poll. And Twitter's more college football, I think less just general Miami, where I think my Instagram's really Miami.
But
And so,
can you
Stugotz
get
is
total
strong and
numbers
Lucy.
and just add up all the numbers?
that would have been a really great idea, but we already booked the flight to
No,
Washington.
Twitter just chose the game you wanted to go to.
No, I didn't. I didn't tell Twitter what I was going to do. I didn't lead anyone.
Right.
What does TikTok say?
Yeah, we should ask TikTok, but I'm happy with the decision. And we get to go to 2 games, double the content, and I get to go see grunge places.
Boom.
You can be happy with the result, and it can also be the fall of democracy around our show.
There were 2 polls. I picked between one of them.
November 6th.
There were 2 polls. And why were we doing 2 polls on where it is you were to go? And then we asked the audience to get involved, and they did get involved.
So here's how this happened. Juju was traveling from Germany on Monday, so it didn't get on the official Le Batard show poll, which honestly I'm glad. Those Miami fans would have sent me to Tallahassee, and I don't really want to go there. And so then I put one on my Instagram and one on my Twitter, Twitter, I have a larger following.
Yeah.
So a larger group of people, and they chose Utah, Washington.
You didn't want to go to Tallahassee, but that had a potential to be a drunken, messy, good content circus farm.
I think so too, but every college is sort of like that, and I've heard really great things about the Washington tailgate scene. We would get 2 videos out of this. I really want to go sailgating, and I'm very excited. It'll be a much better game.
And grunge.
She's committed to
I love
content,
Nirvana.
Dan. She's committed to making so much content.
That's all I do.
You do a lot of that. It's you keep the social accounts on the weekend are vibrant because you're running around on every field in tears.
I think I'll definitely cry at this one. I'll definitely cry at this
It's
one.
super strange, is it not? Is it not unusual that you keep getting so moved by Saturdays that you're sobbing?
By Bedlam.
I'm sorry for being happy. Sorry for being grateful and enjoying the moment. I cry a lot. It's not that weird. I cry all the time. It's awesome. I feel great.